In July 2019, 5 friends, Michael, David, Sarah, Jason, and Emily, embarked on what was supposed to be a memorable adventure through the heart of the Amazon rainforest. Their plan was straightforward: a 3-day trek into the wilderness, a night of camping near a gently flowing river, and a safe return before the weather could turn. Spirits were high, and the promise of untouched nature filled them with excitement. The first day unfolded like a dream. They marveled at towering trees that had stood for centuries, listened to exotic birds call to one another, and even caught a distant glimpse of a jaguar moving silently through the undergrowth. Every sound and sight reinforced their belief that nature was both beautiful and benevolent. Yet as dusk settled and shadows lengthened, the atmosphere began to change. The vibrant chorus of the jungle was replaced by an eerie hush, and the sky darkened far more rapidly than they had anticipated. Then, the first raindrop fell. What began as a gentle patter soon escalated into a torrential downpour. Rain hammered the canopy and drummed relentlessly on the leaves, creating a deafening, constant roar that seemed to echo their mounting anxiety. The once firm dirt path quickly dissolved into a thick, viscous mud that clung to their boots and slowed their progress. Visibility diminished under the heavy veil of rain and swirling mist, leaving them disoriented and vulnerable. David tried to check his GPS for reassurance, but there was no signal, just the cold reminder of their isolation. "Guys, we need to set up camp now," Michael shouted above the clamor of the storm. The urgency in his voice cut through the chaos as they scoured their surroundings for a safe haven. They eventually stumbled upon a small clearing, a rare patch of ground that offered a semblance of shelter. In a desperate rush, they attempted to pitch their tents. However, the relentless rain was so overpowering that the flimsy fabric collapsed, water seeping through every seam as if determined to erase their presence. To make matters worse, the river they had once admired for its calm beauty was now surging ominously. The water, swollen by the rain, was rising fast, its dark, churning surface a clear signal of impending danger. Amid the storm's fury, Jason suddenly froze in place. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice trembling as if echoing an unspoken dread. The others paused, straining to listen beyond the incessant roar of the rain. Then, barely audible yet unmistakable, a distant scream cut through the downpour, a woman's cry for help. Emily's heart pounded as she called out into the darkness, "Hello?" Her voice was swallowed by the storm, and no reply came. Sarah clutched Jason's arm, uncertainty and fear mingling in her eyes. "There's no one out here but us, right?" she asked, though even she wasn't sure. Just then, heavy, wet footsteps began to punctuate the chaos. Footsteps that moved quickly through the mud, drawing nearer with each passing second. Michael, trying to dispel the dread that was creeping over them, grabbed his flashlight and directed its beam toward the source of the sound. Through the torrent, the light flickered across something moving among the trees. For one terrifying moment, they caught sight of her, a woman drenched completely, her hair plastered to her face, and her white dress clinging desperately to a thin, trembling body. But it was her eyes, black, empty, and devoid of any warmth, that sent an icy terror through their veins. Before they could process what they had seen, she vanished as abruptly as she had appeared. Panic surged through the group. "We need to leave now," Michael shouted, his voice a desperate command amid the chaos. With nothing but instinct to guide them, they grabbed their few remaining belongings and bolted into the storm, slipping in the treacherous mud and pushing through the relentless downpour. They ran as if their lives depended on it. The rising river roared in their ears, a menacing reminder of the natural fury that sought to engulf them. Then, amid the frantic escape, Emily screamed, a piercing cry that cut through the tumult. She had stumbled into a hidden ditch, the muddy water dragging at her limbs as she sank further into the dark earth. Jason and David reacted immediately, lunging forward to pull her from the treacherous grip of the ditch. When they finally managed to drag her out, her face was ashen and eyes wide with terror. In a trembling voice, she managed to gasp, She was there. She pulled me down." No time remained for explanations or questions. The group, hearts hammering and adrenaline surging, resumed their frantic flight through the storm. The forest seemed to conspire against them, twisting familiar paths into labyrinthine traps. Just when hope seemed dimmest, a faint, welcoming light appeared in the distance, a small wooden hut, its door left ajar and a weak fire flickering inside. Driven by desperation, they ran toward the hut. As they crossed its threshold, the chaos outside abruptly softened. The torrential rain lessened, as if some unseen force had halted its assault at the doorway. Within the cramped shelter, amidst the lingering scent of damp wood and smoke, they discovered an old rotting diary. Michael, seeking any clue that might explain the horrors they had experienced, flipped through the fragile pages. The final entry sent shivers cascading down their spines. "I hear her at night. She calls my name. She waits in the rain. And those who follow her voice never return." That night, fear ruled the small hut. The friends huddled around the dying fire, its weak warmth a meager barrier against the terror lurking outside. They spent the long hours awake, listening intently to the storm's dying echoes and the eerie silence that sometimes followed, each creak and gust amplifying their dread. By morning, the storm had subsided, leaving behind a damp, eerily quiet jungle. Gathering what little courage they had left, they retraced their steps until they finally reached the main trail, and eventually the nearest village. When they recounted their harrowing ordeal to the locals, the reaction was one of horror and resignation. An elderly villager leaned in, his voice a trembling whisper. "You saw her, the lost bride. She drowned in the jungle floods years ago, and now when the rain comes, she searches for someone to take her place." Since that day, none of the five ever spoke of the incident again. They never ventured into the jungle at night, especially not during a rainstorm, choosing instead to leave some mysteries undisturbed where nature and its lost souls could remain in eternal silence.